Okay, now we can get started. We're going to read Genesis 35, 22 through 29, 22 being the key verse. But in order to put the key verse into context, I'd like to look at what follows. And we've looked at this now for several weeks. And the idea that there's this enigma regarding Jacob's non-action here. And so we've been analyzing this and looking at it. And so before I make more comments, why don't we read, somebody could lead out, read 22, and let's together read 22 through 29.
While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah. And Israel heard of it. Jacob had 12 sons. The son of Leah, Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Son of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin, the son of Rachel's maidservant, Michal, Dan, and Naphtali, the sons of Leah's maidservant, Zephath, and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, who were born to him in Padan Aram. Jacob came home with his father Isaac and Mamre near Kirhath, Haran, and his Hebron, or Abram and Isaac were saved. Isaac lived 180 years, and then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old, full years, and his son Esau and Jacob buried him.
All right, good. Thank you, Carl, for leading out and doing that. So, what was that?
Sorry about the pronunciation.
No, you did good. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. So, where we're at in this study is we're analyzing, exploring Jacob's history. We're now towards the end of our study. I will move in after we finish this chapter. Really, chapter 36 starts with the narrative regarding Joseph. And I'm not sure we will be looking at a whole lot there, but we'll be advancing back to Genesis 49, where at the end of Jacob's life, where he blesses his son. And I do want to spend some time in there. But we have occasion right now to take the Jacob narratives and to look at this and derive truth from what we have learned over the course of this study. One of which is we're watching the development of a man, of a young boy to adulthood, to the responsibilities of life and the building of his life, to receiving a blessing and having tremendous relational challenges in his life, and now towards the end of his life. And so what I have done is I've identified several texts, and we're working through them, and I'm plugging those into what I'm calling stages of growth in a person's life. And I think these are generally true. Regardless of the source, people who write about human development write about growth in human development in regard to various stages people go through. Now, they don't all agree on the number of stages and the labeling of those stages, but it is really fascinating that no matter what you study, at least, I've looked at charts like this wide comparing and so forth, and some have 4 stages, very few. Some have as many as 16, 18 stages that people go through, natural growth process. And but the interesting thing is they all end up at the same place. In other words, there's a process that we go through that I believe, from my Christian perspective, it's God's design for us. And that we're all supposed to look alike and have the same comparisons as we get to be our age, fully mature. And there's some characteristics there in that. So in my model that I've created, there are 7 stages. And we looked at stage 1 last week, and we had some texts in there early on. The text is Jacob's grabbing of the heel at birth. And what does that represent? Well, it represents stage 1 in human development, which is the idea of survival. I'm using the circle. This will become more apparent as we go through. The text is Genesis 25:26. The action is the grabbing of the heel. The key concern regarding stage 1 is survival, and it's having enough food and shelter in order to survive. And then that's the beginning slide. And then for each of the stages, we're going to see a slide just like these two. Today we're going to go on to stage 2, and they'll look the same, but of course the information is different in correlating the stage. So in each of these stages, there is a healthy component and an unhealthy component. And I'm calling the healthy component authentic. It's our true self. It's the self that God has created. But my belief, and I'm not alone in this, is that through the interaction with human beings and life, we develop an inauthentic or an adaptive self. We actually create a different person, a different being. Now we share the same body, but there are adaptations that we do because of life response and human response, and I think it correlates exactly with what is intended in Genesis chapter 3. We call it the fall. This adaptive self is what we do as human beings in order to compensate for the fears and things that are within. Now, I'm calling this, in each one there's this, I'm calling this action of adaptation a seed coat. And it comes from the natural world. All seeds have a coating around them to protect them. And they can lie in that state dormant for years and years and years. But once that seed is placed into the ground in a fertile environment, moist and with nourishment, that seed coat breaks down and life can begin. The analogy the analogy I'm using is that is what happens to human beings is we create several seed coats. And we can lie in a dormant state for years and years and years, and unless that seed coat is broken down, we lie in this dormant state. But if it does, true life, the life intended of what it means to be in Christ, and the life begins to flourish. Thus, the scripture, Jesus said, unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground, it abides alone. But if it dies, if it allows the coating to be broken down, it bears much fruit. There you go. There is the key text. So that's what we're talking about. We won't review the particulars of stage 1, but that's where we're going. And I took some extended time because Dick and Gene have not been here, so you have an idea what we're talking about here. So now we're going to stage 2. There it is, stage 2. And here's our text. For those of you that have been here, you've seen, and I know you can't read it. That's not the point. The point is that you're going to start seeing the yellows go through here. We're not going to look at every one of these texts. These are texts that we have looked at in the course of our study. And we looked at these 2 last time. We're going to go to stage 2 today. But we're not going to look at every one. Don't think we're going to have all these weeks here. We are just going to cover one stage today. But stage 2 is right there towards the beginning. That's the idea. This is the beginning of Jacob's life, and this is now towards the end. This is where we are now in the text, but we're looking back. And what that text reads is this. It's 27:19, and the action in that text is the stealing of the blessing, where Jacob dresses up like his brother. And the idea there is that he's pretending to be someone different. He's pretending to be someone different. There is the key idea. And the key concern in stage 2 is acceptance. Stage 1 was survival, but soon after, if our needs are meant for survival, having shelter and food, we as human beings are created for relationships. We need to be loved, and we need to love. It's just innate within our being, this idea of acceptance. So, how does this play out within our model? Well, the authentic indicator, and I think at birth, that there is a sense of love and belonging. But early on in our lives, all of our lives, there is a separation that takes place in our being, and it creates the need to adapt because of internal fears. Life response, and so how we adapt are different. Life responses of fear or anger or shame. And I picked these three those three responses, fear, anger, or shame, are there for a reason, and they're on every slide, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that at another time. But we respond, the seed coat responds, seed coat here, we build our seed coat via the responses of fear, anger, or shame based on a belief that I must be someone different. I must be someone different in order to gain acceptance. Guys, we would be in absolute denial to think that has never affected you and I. I mean, it begins it begins before the playground experience. You know, you're the last guy to be picked. Okay, anybody or it doesn't matter if you're the last guy to be picked at recess. I remember at Harris Elementary to this day, every Monday we'd pick football teams for the week. And you'd have the two real popular guys being captains, and then they would have all the rest of the guys would stand along the chain link fence, and then you get to pick who's your team for that week. And one team, the good guys were the Green Bay Packers, and the bad guys were the Chicago Bears. And we did that every week. There was there was the AFL, but you know, there really wasn't a following in those days of the Broncos because they had not come into the NFL yet. And it was a whole different, it was like minor league baseball. You were either, at Harris Elementary, you were either a Packer fan or a Bear fan. And every week we played that scenario out on this. And of course you had the guys in there that were the last guys, but what about the guys who were still good athletes, but they weren't the best athletes? No matter where we are in the pecking order, guys, there's this innate feeling within us that we're not good enough, we don't measure up. And that's a seed coat that we create. And the only way through that to grow to another stage is somehow there's got to be a death to that. And unfortunately, for some of us, it takes many years to work through that. I'm going to show a video of how this affects young men. Of course, you know, I'm always looking for videos, and this is actually one I've used at Christ in the Rockies. Bob, I don't know if you've seen this one because I showed this to the boys.
Oh, I haven't been up to that meeting.
Yeah, and I took the boys aside this year. This is a new video. It's a 2015 movie, and I'm calling this video clip the beginning of the adaptive self. How it happens, at least in young men. I think you guys will be able to identify with it, and we'll see if we can see if the technical issues here. There's a lot that's happening by pushing of the screen, and we'll see if we can get this thing to work. No sound. Okay, guys. I have trouble with this thing. Okay, bear with me. This demands a chair. Now it's, okay, I got that. Hey, look at there. Whoop.